cambiar tu ser. La prueba
For anybody on the south end, we could think of a potential vendor of our.
Yes?
Brian, you could put a little
Oh,
counter
yes.
outside. A farm stand.
There's a coffee shop all right across the road from Patterson's.
Yep. Morningside Bakery.
Morningside Bakery, and they could be approached as a possible vendor. Our coffee is grown by a co-op who have their finca, which is a farm, their plantation, on the side of a volcano on the southern end of this island. The coffee shrubs are grown, and the cherries, which are little reddish berries, which ripen at various rates in the late autumn, our autumn, and are then picked usually around late November through December, maybe into early January, depending on weather conditions. These little cherries are picked by hand, and the bushes have to be picked over and over and over again because they don't all ripen at the same time. And then bags of these juicy little berries are carried down the mountainside to a processing area in the finca. There, the berries are digested, the pulp is removed, and the seeds inside, which are actually the coffee beans, are spread out on large concrete pads where they are sun-dried for 3 or 4 days. They're being turned frequently. Then they're gathered up, and they go on to long tables where they're being picked over by mainly women and some children, and they're picked over about 3 times. So all the abnormally formed cherries or coffee beans, I should say, and little sticks and stones and little pieces of concrete are carefully removed. The coffee beans are then bagged. Eventually, they're gathered up and shipped up to a port either in Seattle or Vancouver. And at the present time, our particular group gets about 7,000 or 8,000 pounds a year. These beans are in 152-pound bags. They are nursed through customs, sometimes quickly, sometimes with complications. Sometimes some of the bags are ripped open by customs, and all the beans are dumped on the container floor, which costs us quite a bit of money. But eventually, we get them to a storage area, and from there, they're sent over to our storage facility, which is in Duncan. When we need the coffee, we let the roasting facility in Duncan know what roasting temperatures we want for the beans, and we usually have maybe 200 pounds roasted at a time every 2 or 3 weeks. We go over, pick up the roasted coffee beans, bring them back, put them in bags, and distribute them to our various outlets. The bags are labeled. The labels are made by a group member. They're put on the bags by volunteers. The bags are filled by volunteers, and it's a very low-cost operation. Once we sell the beans, all the monies are gathered together and eventually distributed for a variety of development projects in Central America. In the early days, back in the early 90s, I would say, our main focus of the group was on water distribution projects. And so we funded quite a variety of those. When I say we funded them, basically our funds went to buy the supplies and pay for some of the engineering work, and the local folks did all the work and the installation and so on, and have been looking after those systems ever since. After that was completed, Some of our funding went for disaster relief because there was a hurricane that occurred that destroyed a lot of the infrastructure on the island. So some of our monies went to restore roads, to buy gasoline so they could run some of their heavy equipment and that sort of thing. Eventually, we developed other projects, one of which was a women's group which operates both on Ometepe Island and on the adjacent area of the mainland, and it goes under the acronym MEC. Initially, we were funding a microbank for women, which was looked after by this local group of women. And more recently, after the microbank was fully funded to their satisfaction, the funds have gone into conducting workshops for women, teaching them about their rights, teaching them how to run a business, teaching them about politics, and so on. So that's one of the ongoing projects that we still support. Another project in rural Nicaragua, not necessarily Ometepe, is run by Dr. Saul, and what he does is goes into the remote villages and trains health workers to deal with everyday health problems, as well as providing health education to the people. He has a very broad interpretation of health, and so we have funded the purchase of chickens so that people can produce protein and sell eggs and generate revenue that way. We have funded the purchase of sewing machines so that they can make their own clothing and sell clothing. These are all little industries that they can do. And then we have a couple of projects in Nicaragua, one of which is in a Mayan community. And it is basically providing scholarships for Mayan students so that they can pursue their higher education. Another one is for the installation of stoves, because in these remote communities, the traditional way of cooking has been over an open fire in a small house. And the smoke, of course, accumulates in the house. Children fall into the open fire, and there's a number of health problems that come out of that. And our project has been to fund the distribution of materials for a stove called an O'Neill stove, which is a very efficient wood stove, which can be installed in the houses, and all the smoke is vented outside. The stove consumes only about a third of the amount of fuel that an open fire consumes. And so the women who traditionally are the wood gatherers have a lot more time to devote to other things. And so far we've funded 200 or 300 of these stoves. So that's just an overview of where our funds go these days.
Puede cambiar